Welcome back to another edition of the Sal Greco Show. On this edition of the Sal Greco Show, we have Tim Pearson, the thug, the deputy mayor of deputy mayors of public safety. He's at it again. He's in trouble again. I mean, he's got the Department of Investigation probe on him. He's got the feds on him. He's got 4 sexual harassment lawsuits on him. Yet Eric Adams refuses to fire him. He is somehow entrenched in his administration, and we're going to show you at least some clips of an incident that occurred with him last year that is going to lead to another lawsuit for New York City to defend against. Then we have Randy Mastro. He was being grilled by City Council for his hearing over whether he could be the next head of Corporation Counsel. Very interesting. Then, of course, we have 2 things that I want to discuss with the migrant shelters that are occurring there in New York City. Just a complete mess. And it's a mess given to us by the wonderful administration that's currently running this country. And let's just get into it. New video shows hectic aftermath of shelter scuffle involving Mayor Adams' advisor, Tim Pearson, the thug that is somehow still employed by the city despite 4 sexual harassment lawsuits. That stuff does not fall under the scope of anybody's duties that work for the city or the NYPD. What can I say about this guy? Look at this guy. Look at the picture. Timothy Pearson here. What is he doing wearing an NYPD flak jacket? He does not work for the NYPD. In fact, he works for the mayor's office. So this is an article by Chris Sommerfeld from the Daily News, New York Daily News. He writes a lot of good stuff, by the way. You should check him out. After allegedly getting into a fight with a group of security guards inside a Manhattan migrant shelter last year, Tim Pearson, a top public safety advisor to Mayor Adams and a thug, was confronted by one of them outside the facility, even as NYPD officers arrived to defuse the situation. Surveillance footage obtained by the Daily News shows. The alleged scuffle inside the since-shuttered migrant shelter on West 31st Street near 8th Avenue on October 17, 2023, remains the subject of a probe by the city's Department of Investigation more than 10 months after the incident. That inquiry is part of a cloud of legal and administrative troubles looming over Pearson that also includes 4 lawsuits filed by former and current NYPD officers accused of sexual misconduct and retaliation. A DOI spokeswoman declined to comment this month on the status of the Pearson investigation other than to say it's still ongoing. The shelter brawl prompted the arrest of 2 security guards, but charges against them were dismissed within days after they and other eyewitnesses alleged Pearson, an ex-NYPD inspector, had started the melee by grabbing a female guard by the neck and pushing her to the ground after she demanded to see his identification. At the time, Adams spokesman Charles Ludwig said Pearson was denied entry and accosted by a guard upon trying to conduct a spot inspection of the shelter, which was shut down by the FDNY a few days later due to a fire safety concern. The surveillance footage, which was obtained by the news via Freedom of Information Law request, doesn't show the actual fight, which allegedly erupted inside when Pearson arrived for the surprise inspection. But the footage recorded by an NYPD surveillance camera mounted on a nearby light pole shows about 25 minutes of what transpired by the shelter entrance in the immediate wake of the alleged clash. Pearson didn't return a request for comment this month on the newly unearthed footage. Adams spokeswoman Amaris Cockfield declined to comment on the footage, but said Friday that Pearson was participating in a typical safety inspection when the commotion happened. When the footage starts, Pearson wearing a dark blue windbreaker that says NYPD on the back can be seen standing outside the shelter talking to an officer while pointing repeatedly at the front door to the facility. As Pearson keeps pointing, The officer presses his hands down, almost as if to ask Pearson to calm down, the footage shows. Seconds later, a female security guard is seen exiting the shelter. She walks over, appears to confront Pearson, and points at him. Pearson stands still, pointing back at the door. She exited, at which point two officers separated them. The woman then tries a second time to get in Pearson's face, but is blocked by more officers, who eventually lead her back inside, the footage shows. A source with direct knowledge of the matter confirmed the female security guard is Leisha Bell, who accused Pearson of grabbing her by the neck when he first showed up at the shelter, an act that allegedly set off a broader scuffle between Pearson and her colleagues. Pearson is then seen speaking on the phone for several minutes. Once off the phone, Pearson talks for several minutes with an NYPD supervisor. After their conversation ends, the supervisor and multiple officers enter the shelter and come back out with Bell in handcuffs. She's then led away into an awaiting police car. A few minutes later, a male shelter security guard, who was allegedly involved in the earlier fight, approaches the shelter from a different direction, the footage shows. As the guard, who has been identified as Terrence Rosendahl, appears, Pearson points at Rosendahl and says something to the officers on the scene. That prompts officers to rush toward Rosendahl, who starts backing up. Someone is then seen falling into a planter before officers place Rosendahl under arrest and lead him into a police car. Once Rosendahl's in custody, Pearson gets into a black SUV that then drives off, the footage shows, before ending. Rosendahl was charged with obstructing government administration and harassment following the incident. His public defense attorney said at the time he spent 30 hours in custody before being released. Days later, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office dismissed all charges against Rosendahl and Bell. Jason Sternberger, an attorney representing Rosendahl and Bell, filed notices of claims in late October notifying the city his clients plan to sue Pearson, Adams, and the NYPD on allegation they were falsely arrested, falsely imprisoned, and maliciously prosecuted. Rosendahl and Bell haven't filed lawsuits since, but Sternberger said this month his clients are still pursuing their cases. He declined further comment. The DOI probe into the shelter fight has since been broadened to scrutinize Pearson's role in overseeing NYPD personnel after the sexual misconduct lawsuits filed against him alleged he holds unusually large sway over police matters despite not being a department official. As first reported by the news, 3 of the NYPD officers suing Pearson were questioned by the FBI about him earlier this year as part of an unspecified probe. Amid the legal headaches, Adams hasn't modified Pearson's duties. People have a tendency to, when accusations are made, to say, what the pressure's hot, you need to just get rid of a person. Adams, who has known Pearson since they served the NYPD together, said last month when asked why his duties remain the same. I just don't operate that way. So what else can be said about this thug? I mean, listen, Tim Pearson, he's a massive liability to the city. He should no longer be employed by the city, let alone be represented in his 4 sexual harassment / assault lawsuits that the city is illegally representing him on. And I pointed this out in the last episode, and then here he is acting like a thug. So he had 2 people incarcerated. I don't know why he's running around with an NYPD flak jacket. That is against protocols. He should have a mayor's office jacket. That's confusing. So when you show up to a scene, you have a guy from the mayor's office running around with a NYPD jacket on. What does that tell the public? I mean, if I was getting stopped, I'd say, who is this guy? And he's putting his hands all over him. Meanwhile, he's not even a cop. That's a lawsuit upcoming. Add that to the list. I mean, the FBI is running around asking questions about him. This guy is a huge liability. If Eric Adams had any inkling of how to manage and run a city, he would fire his friend. But of course, I don't know. Does he have skeletons in the closet and is afraid that Timmy Pearson may just reveal some of those. Speaking of Timmy Pearson, all those sexual assault lawsuits, Randy Mastro was at his confirmation hearing there in the City Council, and it did not go well. I don't know why they pushed this through. And, well, we would like to know what would he do about these sexual assault lawsuits that the city is defending New York City employees on, which is illegal. It's against the law, actually. It's official misconduct. So let me read this article to you. Randy Mastro grilled by New York City Council at 10th Corporation Counsel confirmation hearing. Another great article by Chris Sommerfeld of the New York Daily News. I hope a Pulitzer Prize comes his way because, handing them out to these anti-Trumpers that write nothing but Donald Trump garbage, Fugazi News 24/7 is pathetic. Chris Sommerfeld should be in the running. All right, so here's his article. Randy Mastro, Mayor Adams' controversial Corporation Counsel nominee, argued in his long-awaited confirmation hearing Tuesday that he's a good fit for the prestigious job because he put his life on the line when he served previously in city government, but his pitch wasn't well received by city council members. Throughout the Marathon Council Rules Committee hearing, members singled out Mastro for blistering criticism over his role as a top official in ex-Mayor Rudy Giuliani's administration. They also tore into his record of championing conservative causes in court, including representing fossil fuel interests, landlords, and major corporations. And notably, no one on the dais had spoken favorably about his nomination as the hearing approached its ninth hour at 6 p.m. Bronx Manhattan Councilwoman Diana Ayala, a Democrat who holds significant sway in the chamber as its deputy speaker, even questioned Mastro's moral character while blasting his legal representation of a group of Upper West Side residents who tried to evict homeless men from a hotel during the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm very disturbed by that, she told Mastro. Mastro, an ex-federal prosecutor who can't land a corporation counsel job unless at least half of the council's 51 members support him in a vote expected next month, grew combative at times. On several occasions, he pleaded, "Please let me answer," as members railed against his work for Giuliani, which included advising the Republicans' 1997 re-election campaign and serving as his deputy mayor for operations. "We seem to be stuck in the 1990s, Mastro said after Council Majority Whip Salvina Brooks Powers questioned why New Yorkers should trust him to serve as the city's government top attorney when he defended and served in the racist Giuliani administration. Later, Council Majority Leader Amanda Farias and Mastro said Mastro was complicit in the Giuliani administration's racism and that he must be judged on that record. "Please look at the totality of my record," protested Mastro. In his testimony, Mastro described himself as a lifelong Democrat and said his long law career, which includes pro bono work for anti-police brutality protesters, would make him a good corporation counsel. He even called corporation counsel the only job in city government I've ever aspired to do. The post comes with overseeing the law department and representing the mayor and other city employees, including council members, in various legal matters. And Mastro told members he's uniquely well qualified to help them craft legislation to make sure it's legally bulletproof. He also said that as a corporate counsel, he would use the law department to pursue affirmative legal action to advance policy agendas, including the council's, as opposed to just defending city employees against lawsuits. "I put my life on the line for this city, and I will do it again," he said, noting he faced death threats from the mafia while spearheading a Giuliani initiative to break up mob activities at Manhattan's Fulton Fish Market. Does he know a certain mob associate from the Bronx? I wonder. Continuing, he conceded there were issues with his tenure in Giuliani's administration, though. "I wish we would have developed better relationships with communities of color," he said. Council Speaker Adrian Adams, who as the chamber's top Democrat arguably holds the most influence over Mastro's fate, told Mastro in her opening remarks that, "I still don't think my question was really specifically addressed." After asking him to explain why New Yorkers should trust he would, as corporation counsel, have the city's government's best interest at heart, not the mayor's, giving how loyal he showed himself to be to Rudy Giuliani. In the middle of the hearing, the Speaker's office also disseminated written statements from 4 unnamed law department attorneys, including a 15-year veteran voicing opposition to his nomination due to concerns about his politics and history of suing the city government over various issues. It first emerged in April that the mayor was considering naming Mastro as Corporation Counsel, but it took until July 30th for Adams to officially nominate Mastro after months of the mayor's team privately pushing for him, including setting up meetings between him and council members. Sources in the council say that behind-the-scenes lobbying continued through the immediate lead-up to Tuesday's high-stakes hearing, with Mastro being spotted at City Hall multiple times last week. Dozens of Democratic council members who have clashed intensely with the mayor over a variety of policy matters in recent months pledged before Mastro's nomination even became official they would work to block it. A council member who participated in Tuesday's hearing was extensively involved in preparing for it, told the Daily News after the grilling that the chamber's 45 Democratic members remain almost uniformly opposed to Mastro's nomination. The member who spoke on condition of anonymity said the hearing only added to concerns about Mastro. They were told 6 ways this Sunday Mastro doesn't have the votes, but they plowed forward anyway, said the member who wasn't authorized by the Speaker's office to discuss conversations with the mayor's office. In a briefing that took place as Mastro's confirmation got underway, the mayor said, "I think that we'd be proud to have him represent the city of New York," he said. That determination goes out of the council. Mastro's nomination comes after the tumultuous departure of Sylvia Hinz Radix, Adams' first Corporation Counsel. Hinz Radix, the first black woman to ever serve as Corporation Counsel, announced she was resigning in April. Sources familiar with the matter said the departure came after she clashed with Adams administration officials about a raft of sensitive legal issues, including a concern about whether it was appropriate for the law department to provide the mayor and Tim Pearson, his top public safety advisor, with city legal representation against civil lawsuits accusing him of sexual misconduct. Mastro said he couldn't comment on whether it was appropriate to Pearson and the mayor to get lawyers in those cases, but he pushed back against critics who claimed he'd only be a henchman for the mayor as a corporation counsel. "They obviously don't know me," he said. "I am my own man." Of all people, Councilman Lincoln Ressler, that's his name, who looks like one of the Golden Girls, if you remember that show. That's one of the monikers that my friend John McCarry gave him. He grills Randy Mastro specifically about GML 50K2 and how the city is representing a ton of people in Adams' administration for sexual assault, sexual harassment, covering up, smearing it, everything that goes against 50K2 with no legal definition to what. So let's play this video.
Could you briefly explain your understanding of the process by which the law department determines whether or not to represent an employee accused of sexual harassment?
I have not been involved with the law department. I remember what the procedures were 25 plus years ago. I know there are protocols for doing that. I would want to review it when I get there. I would want to evaluate the protocols to see whether I think they're appropriate or not, and I would commit to do that. But I'm not familiar with the protocol.
Well, I'll tell you the upshot. The law department will determine if the employee was acting within the scope of his or her public employment and in the discharge of his or her duties, and was not in violation of any rule or regulation of his agency at the time of the alleged act or omission occurred. So, yes or no, is it correct that if the Corporation Counsel determines that an employee was acting outside the scope of their employment, the employee is not entitled to representation, as far as you understand?
I think as a general proposition, while each case depends upon its facts, I think that is correct.
Correct.
The employee acted outside the scope of their employment. That would be different.
And yes or no, is it correct that the Corporation Counsel determines that an employee acting in violation of any rule or regulation at the time of the alleged incident, that employee is not entitled to representation?
Again, it depends upon the facts of each case. And we don't, in the context of potential civil representation or in the context of a criminal case, We don't prejudge the individual based on the allegations in a criminal or a civil complaint.
Of course, you don't prejudge. But if you believe
the fact of the matter is, these issues depend upon a deep dive factually, and I would want to review the law department's protocols to determine whether I thought they were appropriate, and I will reform them accordingly. But I don't believe that the law department represents people who act outside the scope of their.
Well, they're certainly not supposed to. Do you believe that if reasonably verified, repeated sexual harassment is in violation of a rule or regulation of the city?
Obviously, sexual harassment is not something that's condoned by the city.
If appointed, would you agree to re-examine the current representation decisions to confirm that they meet the appropriate standard?
Yes.
When you were first approached by the Adams administration to ask if you were interested when were you first approached by the Adams administration to ask if you were interested in being considered for Corp Counsel?
Earlier this year.
Can you be more specific?
It was after the first of the year, probably more like February. But that's based on recollection. It's now been so long since word leaked that I was potentially being considered.
Well, you made it. You made it to
like
this
a
stage in the
lifetime,
process.
ladies
It
and
is.
gentlemen.
I know it does. Have you had any conversations with the mayor or members of his team in the past 7-8 months about decisions regarding representation and provision of outside counsel?
None.
Would you consult?
I've never had a discussion with the mayor about any particular case or any particular representation at all.
Would you consult with the mayor when making determinations of when to provide external counsel for senior government officials?
The law department makes those determinations according to a protocol. It's not a question of consulting with any one individual.
What role do you believe the Corporation Counsel has in defending the mayor and members of administration for activities that fall outside of the reasonable expectation of work on behalf of the public interest?
I think we've already talked about this. If you acted outside the scope of your authority, that's not something that I understand typically Corporation Counsel would be involved in.
Well, I have to say plainly, of course, I'm concerned about the case of Tim Pearson in particular. There have been allegations of repeated sexual misconduct and harassment by him, by many colleagues who've worked with him in city government. There was an inadequate investigation, according to statements from the City Hall press office. And yet he is still in his job. He's still overseeing staff, including women. He's been provided with a white shoe attorney, outside counsel at no expense to him. We as taxpayers are paying for it. And, this, of course, has been widely reported to be the major or one of the major issues that led to the discontinuation of public service for Judge Heinz Radix. So it is of grave concern to me how the mayor interfered in this case and insisted that outside counsel be provided to his friend, that an inadequate investigation occur, and that he's continued to serve in his job without any repercussions whatsoever. And I take you at your word that you said today, if confirmed, that you will review that case and that you will not consult with the mayor in determining whether outside counsel is appropriate. Did I get that right?
You do have that right. And I want to say, I appreciate what you are saying. I'm not accepting the characterizations of certain issues or people. I have to steep myself in the issues and study them. But I just say this about the judge. I have enormous respect for the judge.
You and me both.
I appeared before her when she was a judge on the case to block the Bloomberg administration from expanding the Brooklyn House of Detention. Did that on behalf of Billy Thompson and Letitia James to block that decrepit facility from being expanded. And she was the judge who issued that order. So I have great respect for her.
I do as well. And as chair of the Governmental Operations Committee, we have oversight of the law department. I work closely with Judge Heinz Radix. She never had us fill out a form either. She was a great partner for our committee and for the council as a whole.
You'll be on speed dial to me, Councilman Wrestler, and
you might regret that.
Door will always be open. And to you, Councilman, no matter what.
You don't want to offer that. Let me just say that.
Okay, folks, as you just heard or you saw, Councilman Lincoln Wrestler took Randy Mastro to town and proved without a shadow of a doubt that he is not up to this job and that you would have just another extension of the corruption that you see in the Eric Adams administration. Now, I understand Lincoln Ressler is progressive. His policies are out there and like from another planet, how crazy they sound. And people have very harsh feelings about him. But don't make your feelings get in the way of facts. Or here in this instance, Lincoln Ressler was looking out in the best interest of the taxpayer. Now, many people like Vicky Palladino. I mean, I originally thought that she was a good person. I think she is. But she didn't do the right thing. She was bootlicking for Randy Mastro. So what you heard right there when he asked them those questions is the fact that Randy Mastro, who should have easily said, when it comes to 50K2 and the fact that this sexual deviant behavior does not fall under the scope of any New York City employees, no, I will not represent him. That is the answer. There is no other answer other than no. And he didn't say that. So that's all you need to know about Randy Mastro. I think Lincoln Ressler did the job of every single council person that was there yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever it was, when he did the hearing. He did the right thing. He did what everybody else should have been doing. So I commend him for that only. Okay. Good job. Can't say the same for Vicky Palladino, who has been silent about all the victims of sexual assault, harassment, rape, smearing, destruction of their character, defaming them from the New York City Police Department, like her friends John Schell and Kaz Daughtry. She backs the blue with a blindfold, no matter what, instead of verifying and then trusting. I'm stunned by Vicky Palladino's behavior, but what can I say? Everybody has their own agenda. So we move on to the migrant shelters that are, all over New York City. They're popping up everywhere. And one in particular has a problem with security. And they're fleecing the New York City taxpayers. So let me read you this article. Here's a story out of the city.nyc. If anybody doesn't know about that website, I suggest you go there. This article was written by Greg B. Smith, who is the Dean of Investigative Journalism in all of New York City. Trust me, he's got the best stories. You just have to wait for him. So this story here involves more corruption by the Eric Adams administration. He's definitely got I don't know who he's hiring for these migrant shelters to be the security, but so here's the article by Greg Smith. Security firm billed for hundreds of 8-hour shifts at migrant shelters. Internal records tell a different story. Daily logs reviewed by the city show Arrow's security staff often recorded working less than a complete shift, but the firm billed taxpayers for full days under a $140 million contract. A Long Island security firm routinely billed taxpayers for full 8-hour shifts at one of the city's biggest migrant shelters, even as daily time logs kept by staff show hundreds of entries in which guards recorded arrival times later than the shifts started or departure time before they ended. A review by the city has found. Under a $140 million contract with the City Health and Hospitals Corp., HHC, Arrows Security last year began providing round-the-clock security at a dozen humanitarian emergency response and relief centers, HERCs, including the Candler Building Shelter for Men in Midtown. Arrows submitted monthly invoices to HHC that is certified detailed the hours that each guard was on duty during each shift on each day. The company asserts these invoices are based on electronic data generated by an app called eHub that staff use to check in and out via their cell phones. But daily paper sign-in and sign-out logs kept at the Candler Building, which houses hundreds of migrants, often contradicted those invoices, as examination by the city revealed. The invoices show Arrow consistently billing the city hospital system for a full 8-hour shifts, with legions of guards all signing in and signing out at exactly the same minute, according to the electronic records. In contrast, the paper logs record hundreds of entries in which guards recorded showing up late or leaving early. In dozens of cases, the timeout field was left blank. And though guards were supposed to initial the log attesting the accuracy of the recorded time and timeout, in dozens of cases, the city found no signature. The invoices and logs were obtained by the City Council's Committee on Oversight, Investigations, and Review by the City. Councilmember Gail Brewer, Democrat from Manhattan, chair of the committee, worries that the contradictory records of Candler raise questions about about the integrity of Arrow's work at all 12 migrant shelters, where it has been providing security since early last year. Council staff examined records from 3 shifts on randomly selected dates in June, September, and October to compare each staff member's sign-in and sign-out times on the logs against the invoices. They found a range of 3.5 to 12.5 hours billed above the actual hours worked. That came to between $120 and $425 per shift. With 3 shifts per day, the staff concluded the total cost of these extra shifts may be significant. The city of New York, since they're using city money, they should be looking at the same information that you looked at and what we looked at, Brewer said, adding that the logs that include late arrivals and early departures are the one that they should be paying for. And if it's not consistent, they should take action. Basically, it does sound like 2 sets of books. Those are 2 huge red flags, Brewer said. The committee obtained the record as part of its overall examination of the Adams administration's migrant-related contracting, focusing in particularly on HHC vendors. Unlike most businesses that are paid by the city government, those vendors are not subject to oversight by the city comptroller. In May, council staff asked Arrow to turn over all invoices to HHC at Candler for April through December 2023 and all staffing logs, documented verification of Arrow personnel present during each shift. They specifically sought all sign-in, sign-out records for the Candler building for the specified time period, including the dates, times, and signatures. In response, Arrow turned over the daily logs. Anthony Mineta, a spokesperson for Arrow, pushed back on the city council's conclusion. We emphatically state that there is no overbilling, he said. The assertion that a paper log is more accurate than our advanced digital timekeeping system is baseless and is creating a false narrative. Our shifts, timekeeping, and invoices have been reviewed and audited and closely scrutinized. This guy, Anthony Mineta, is a big talker. Sounds like he went to a big college. Talking down to us regular folk, like clockwork. The city reviewed all of the monthly invoices Arrow submitted to the Health and Hospitals Corporation from June through September 2023 and compared those to Arrow's daily logs during that time period. In the invoice Arrow submitted to HAC for July 2023, for instance, 99.2% of 5,150 entries for security guards sought payment for full 8-hour shifts, with only 41 requested payments for shifts less than 8 hours. The invoices show all guards on all shifts almost always signing in and out at the exact scheduled start and end of their shifts every day. For instance, signing in at precisely 7 a.m. and signing out at precisely 3 p.m. for the 3 to 7 shift. But the city found hundreds of entries on daily logs in the first 2 weeks of July 2023, recording instances of guards reporting shorter shifts, including 222 arriving late and 51 leaving early. In 196 cases, there was no timeout indicated at all, and in 17 cases, there was no time in. Meanwhile, review of logs for the 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. shift on 11 randomly selected dates in June, July, August, September 2023 show that in 161 of 420 entries, guards signed in as late as 8 a.m., 9 a.m., and even 10 a.m., or left as early as 8 a.m. Arrow billed for a full shift for all of those guards. The logs time out field was left blank 64 times, while the time in field was left blank on a handful of occasions. On June 19, 2023, for example, 2 guards didn't sign in and 4 guards didn't sign out. Arrow billed for a full shift for each of these guards. In response to the city's questions, city hospital officials confirmed that the staff who have been reviewing Arrow's invoices never looked at the handwritten sign-in, sign-out logs because they rely instead on the data generated by an app that allows staff at the shelters to sign in and sign out via their cell phones. In an email response to the city, HHC spokesperson Adam Schreier said labeling the daily timesheets logs as factually inaccurate, stating that Arrow used the documents for organizing its internal operations such as floor assignments, and these documents have never been used as backup documentation for invoice. Arrow executives, on the other hand, said the logs that are kept on site for backup purposes and are not using any invoice calculations in their emailed response to the city. The on-site personnel may keep records for their own backup when things get busy or to double-check the schedules. The contract Arrow signed with HAC requires the firm to operate commercial software system for timekeeping utilized by all staff, but to also maintain contemporaneous, big word, records to all support all invoice amounts to be compliant with good audit practices. Here's this anti-Mineta guy again. A spokesperson for Arrow provided a statement from the company describing the cell phone app system the company uses to tabulate security guard hours as advanced biometric employee time tracking with geofencing technology. This guy again, man. Did he go to Harvard? HAC spokesperson Schreier and Arrow employees sign in through their cell phone once on-site. Employees cannot sign in from another location. Arrow said the system integrates directly with the company's invoicing system and that the invoices are intricately scrutinized by New York City Health and Hospitals and must be certified on a weekly basis since we are under prevailing wage requirements. The company stated the paper logs are not the source of how employees' time is tracked, adding that on-site personnel may keep records for their own backup when things get busy or to double-check the schedules. Schreier said HHC could not comment on how Arrow uses the paper records, but said the agency has approved every invoice Arrow has submitted to date because all the electronic backup records Arrow submit, which is the only form of backup documentation accepted by the HERC finance team, match invoices reviewed by our invoice managers. Asked last week how much HAC has paid Arrow to date, Schreier would only provide information dating back a year, stating that Arrow has been paid $28 million as of August 2023. No comptroller oversight. One consequence of Arrow guards failing to sign the logs emerged in September 2023 internal incident report on vendor misconduct filed by a city Office of Emergency Management employee regarding an Arrow employee at another migrant shelter. The staffer know that an Arrow site leader scheduled to start at 11 p.m. arrived at the McCarran Park shelter in Brooklyn around midnight, but did not enter the facility. The shift was to end at 7 a.m., but the Arrow site leader still wasn't in the facility by 6:30 a.m., the report said. The city worker noted that during building inspections they conducted during that shift, they discovered 3 of 4 Arrow guards on duty apparently all went on break at the same time. The 4th was found sleeping in a storage room. The staffer tried to learn the identities of the 3 guards missing in action, but came up short since they failed to sign in at the start of their shift. In May, council staff also questioned the number of security guards Arrow was placing at Candler, knowing that from April 2023 through December 2023, Arrow saw payment for more than the 30 guards per shift that were authorized under the original agreement with Health and Hospitals. By June 2023, the average shift included 42 guards. They also noted a similar pattern of 4 other shelters where Arrow was providing security. In response, Dr. Ted Long, Senior Vice President at HAC, explained that HAC had to dramatically increase security at Candler as the number of migrants flowed into the city throughout 2023. When the Candler opened in March 2023, 11 floors accommodated 687 guests. By May of this year, 23 floors housed 1,200 people. My God. Dr. Long emphasized that HAC increased security and fire guard staff at the Candler in consultation with the NYPD and FDNY, stating, when the Candler or then doubled in floors and nearly doubled in max occupancy, our security and fire guard staffing had to be right-sized for this expansion as well as to ensure the safety of asylum seekers and staff. Detecting these type of discrepancies is made more difficult because while City Comptroller Brad Lander has oversight of all agencies, Health and Hospitals, a quasi-city agency, is not under his jurisdiction. As of July 31st, HAC was handling more than $2.1 billion in migrant contracts, more than any other agency. The integrity of these contracts is essentially a matter of HAC policing itself. Questions about Arrow's contract emerged last year when the city noted that HAC had awarded the security contract to Arrow despite the fact the security firm was being sued by another city agency that alleged the firm had failed to keep a Brooklyn homeless shelter safe. In court papers, Arrow has denied the allegation that it failed to keep the shelter safe. In response to the city's report, Lander criticized this loophole and pressed for City Hall to provide his auditors with all agency contracts related to migrant shelters. 2 weeks ago, Lander, who has announced he's running for mayor, released an audit criticizing another migrant shelter contract overseen by an agency that is under his charge, the City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, HPD. Lander's auditors alleged that DocGo, doing business as Rapid Reliable Testing NY LLC, made more than $2 million in unauthorized payments to firms they'd hired to do security at the shelters they were operating hotels. Arrow was not one of them. They found DocGo billing the city for hourly rates of $50, above the average hourly rate of $35 to $36. A spokesperson for DocGo said in response, the company was proud to have helped the city navigate this emergency and that it had been assured it would be paid for all its work. Brewer said the contradictions between Arrow's logs and invoices would normally trigger a comptroller audit, but because HAC is outside Landers' jurisdiction, that didn't happen. A spokesperson for Landers said last week that they are now getting migrant-related contracts from HAC, although they do not have jurisdiction over them. This is an example of why HHC should, because the comptroller would have caught this, Brewer said. It's like audit heaven. All right, folks, so I'm going to try to break this down the best way I can. What the article and what it's stating is, so you understand in a company, let's say this isn't a company that is being funded through taxpayers like the job, the migrant shelter. So let's say it's a regular job. So in security in that field of work, in that line of work, when you go to a job, there's usually an app. The app is, again, it's an electronic. It could fail on you at any moment. But the reason they have the apps are when you sign in electronically, it goes to the outsource. There's an outsource company that keeps track, and that's how you get paid for the company. But that's a private company. And they also have a book, usually there when you sign in. That's a paper trail. That's for your company. So there's the outsource company and the company you work for to keep track of this. They kind of mention this in the article, but they're using big words. Some people like to use big words and talk down to people. So that's kind of what they're trying to get at with all that was going on. Of course, if you don't sign in, if you don't sign in on the app, if you don't put it down on the book, and nobody's keeping track of this, which is absolutely a mismanaged job, like one of the worst mismanaged jobs I've seen. But that's basically what you have. You have people that are lazy, not doing their job. And the city taxpayers are being fleeced here. Of course, the New York City Hospital and Health, that is a semi-quasi city agency that doesn't have any oversight, which is a problem. Kind of like the State Liquor Authority is a quasi-state agency that doesn't have any authority, anyone's overseeing them either. Who has the authority to step in here? That is the big question, because it seems like they're trying to rein this in, because the problem here is that it's a contract. The migrant shelter, this company getting that contract for the security came from who? The Eric Adams administration. And I would just review everything that guy, Eric Adams, does in his administration, because there seems to always be something going on with everything that man does. I don't know why. It just seems that way. And here's another story about another migrant incident that had happened. A certain migrant that happened to come from a migrant shelter, and they attacked police officers, and their criminal behavior continues. Here you go. This is the video of the migrant that attacked. There's a whole bunch of these illegals, we'll call illegal immigrants, undocumented, attacking police officers in Manhattan last year. Well, not even last year. It was just not even a few months ago in Times Square. Migrant charged in brutal beating of New York City cops have been caught at border and released last year. This is from the New York Post by Jenny Tyre and Josh Christensen. The migrant accused of leading the infamous beatdown of two cops in Times Square had been nabbed illegally crossing the U.S. border just months earlier, but was released by the Harris-Biden administration. Yoenri Brito, 24, of Venezuela, crossed the border illegally into El Paso, Texas, and was apprehended by the border agents May 9, 2023, according to a House Judiciary Committee report on the migrants file exclusively obtained by the Post. Days later, on May 17, 2023, the Department of Homeland Security authorized release into the U.S. on his own recognizance because of a lack of detention space. Brito had indicated that he needed asylum in the U.S. because he feared returning to Venezuela. Brito went on to be arrested multiple times for a slew of crimes in New York City, including the melee beating of a pair of NYPD officers in Manhattan in January. The suspect is currently being held on bond over the beating and several other of the crimes. DHS was slow to turn over the records on Brito to congressional officials, sitting on them for 3 months after Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration Integrity, Security, and Enforcement Chairman Tom McClintock first requested them, the committee said. The Judiciary panel called out President Joe Biden and border czar, Vice President Kamala Harris, for the release of Brito and well over 7 million illegal aliens into the U.S., saying the move unleashed crime across the country. The results are all too predictable. Cities overwhelmed, public services crushed, and communities shattered by the criminality of some illegal aliens, the Judiciary report states. Although the Biden-Harris administration claims that illegal aliens are vetted before being released into the United States, the reality is much more disturbing. Here's a picture of Brito. When the 59-year-old Harris was serving as California's junior senator, she also supported left-wing immigration policy stances, including the decriminalization of illegal border crossings, but has since walked those positions back since replacing Biden 81 at the top of the 2024 Democratic ticket. When Brito was released from detention on the U.S. border, he was given instructions warning him not to associate with known gang members, criminal associates, or be associated with any such activity, and not to commit any crimes. Soon after, he allegedly helped savagely beat the 2 cops alongside at least 2 other migrants tied to the ruthless Tren de Aragua Venezuelan gang. Brito was charged with assault and obstruction and indicted for tampering with physical evidence. He and his 6 alleged accomplices were released from custody shortly after the violent caught-on-camera incident. Then, after public outcry, he was ordered held on $15,000 cash or $50,000 bond. When it surfaced, he had allegedly sparked the attack while having 2 pending misdemeanor theft cases. Brito was eventually again freed in February when the Reverend Juan Ruiz, the activist minister of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, put up the $15,000 for his release. Our church is basically a sanctuary, Ruiz told the Post at the time. We assume that people are innocent until they are proven otherwise. The fact that he's here illegally, I guess, is not a crime to this guy. But Brito got caught red-handed 2 months later for petty larceny after allegedly trying to steal children's clothing and fragrances from Macy's Herald Square flagship store. Judge Laura Ward said in Manhattan Criminal Court that she was furious he was arrested again while out on bail for the NYPD beating case, warning that another slip-up would land him behind bars. I am very tempted right now to put you in jail. I am telling you right now, if I learn you are rearrested for anything at all between now and this case being finished, I will order a warrant. I will place bail so high you will not get out, she said. If you jaywalk, if you jump a turnstile, if you do anything at all, and I have to issue a warrant, you will not see the light of day until this case is over, Ward said. It wasn't long before Brito was accused of more alleged crime, this time for serial theft. He allegedly robbed a Sephora twice, once in July when he cut security wires on display cases to steal perfumes, and again in early August when he ripped off $1,358 worth of merchandise from store shelves before fleeing with an accomplice who was not arrested, police sources previously told the Post. Brito was indicted August 12th for the theft charges stemming from the Sephora robbery and is being held on a $25,000 bond for the July felony theft, in addition to $50,000 cash bond for the Times Square cop beating. The House Judiciary Committee has released a series of staff reports this year on the U.S. border crisis, including on crimes allegedly committed by migrants in major cities such as New York and Chicago. The crime result from subpar vetting at the southern border that is similar to cross-checking migrants against a blank sheet of paper, according to testimony former Border Patrol Chief Ronnie Scott made before the panel last year. All right, now watching that video, if you could see it on YouTube or Rumble, you see how it's disturbing to watch this thug attack police officers. And he should have been put in jail and stayed there. But unfortunately, in New York City, it's just a free-for-all. And his continued criminal behavior is even more disturbing. You know, I used to encounter this when I was a New York City police officer, but we would arrest undocumented illegals for drunk driving and other crimes. But now, these illegals that come from Venezuela, this is like a migrant crime wave, and it's just infected the city, the state, the country, and it's just ballooning into a problem that, I don't know, How are we going to solve it other than we need a change in the administration that runs this country? That seems to be the mantra here. But then, we also have Eric Adams, who they asked him a question about the sanctuary city status of New York City. And let's hear his answer. Let's hear what he has to say.
Mr. Mayor, I'm Aaron Rennan with Voice of America.
How are you?
Very good. Given recent statements by your NYPD Chief of Patrol and concerns about a perceived increase in migrant-related crime, can you share your current thinking on whether New York City should consider revising its sanctuary status?
Well, that goes through the City Council. They would make that determination, and I have been extremely clear that the overwhelming number of migrants and asylum seekers and undocumented immigrants that come here, their goal is to pursue the American dream. Migrants and asylum seekers are paroled into our city, into our country, so they're here legally. But those who commit violent acts after they serve their time, I think they should be removed from our country. Right now, we don't have the authorization to be able to go and coordinate with ICE. We have to follow the law. I think the City Council should revise what was changed under the previous administration. Mayor Koch had it right, Mayor Bloomberg had it right, and I think we made a miscalculation through this the previous administration.
But do you see yourself and your personal views modifying it? There was the article in the New York Times this weekend about the re-release of the person who raped the person in Coney Island. There's a big push among everyday New Yorkers to change the sanctuary status, specifically for migrants who commit serious crimes. What is your personal feeling on New York staying full-on sanctuary city?
Well, you stated that everyday New Yorkers, there's no more everyday New Yorker than me. I'm a mayor that is closely aligned with the feelings of everyday working class people. I'm clear on that. And I think that I've made it clear, not only my professional, but my personal. People who commit violent acts on New Yorkers and other migrants and asylums and undocumented individuals should not remain in our country after they serve their time.
All right, so there you have it from the mayor of New York City himself. Once again, talking out of both sides of his mouth. Yes, he is correct that City Council did pass the sanctuary city laws, and they'd have to go through City Council to try to take away that kind of status. That's been in effect for a long time. But cooperation from the New York City Police Department and ICE, that does not fall on the City Council. That was an executive order from 2014 from the former mayor of New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio, who made an executive order that stated that New York City Police Department cannot cooperate with ICE. So I'm just going to give you an example. When I was on the job and let's say I incarcerated an undocumented illegal alien and put him in prison for whatever the cause may be, maybe he's driving drunk, and there was an ICE detainer warrant, the NYPD, myself, central booking, where they eventually would book them, would not be able to notify ICE that one of theirs is in our custody. All Eric Adams has to do to change that is rescind that executive order. And everything goes back to the way it was prior to that. See how simple that is, Eric? But Eric doesn't want to upset the people that he has around him, because around Eric, perception is the reality. That's the truth of the Eric Adams administration. Just like this chart that comes from Sam Antar, the former CEO of Crazy Eddie's, whitecollarfraud.com. Don't forget that, whitecollarfraud.com. All right, and we're just going to see the numbers because yet again, he is saying that violent major felonies from 2024 to 2023 is up 4.1% during John Schell's tenure as NYPD Chief of Patrol. Violent major felonies 2024 versus 2021 up 32% during Eric Adams' tenure as mayor. Violent major felonies 2024 versus 2019 up 33.2% since the year before the pandemic, bail reform, and discovery reform. This is an issue, okay? And that's a fact. And Mayor Eric Adams likes to say, the city's not surviving, it's thriving. Crime is down, jobs are up. All his haters become waiters at his table of success. If this was a table of success, I think everybody just got food poisoned. With that being said, before we go, if you like this, what you saw, if you like what you just heard, on YouTube, press that like button, share, subscribe. On Rumble, you hit the Rumble button. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, all those podcasting platforms that love the stream, the Sal Greco Show, share it out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And, of course, we're going to end this on a high note, like I said. We need to hear Kaz Daughtry singing again because I think we haven't had enough of that. And I believe that we might have a star in the making. I believe you may have the next big musician who came from the police department. Eddie Money was one, remember? Maybe Kaz Daughtry will be the next one. Until the next episode, adios.